Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, well, this is a big day for us, so thank you for doing this. This is great timing.
Congrats on the launch.
We are very excited for the announcements today. The new line of Meta glasses. It's the first line of glasses that we've designed with our partner EssilorLuxottica from the ground up. So this builds on the work that we've been doing with Ray-Ban and Oakley and iconic brands, and it basically brings all of that functionality to a new line that we hope will be accessible to a lot more people, but it brings all of the functionality, including the most advanced AI models that we've built right into the glasses. So we're very happy to be doing this.
What is it about the form factor of glasses that draws you to, to think that that will be sort of the next, I guess, version of the phone, maybe?
Yeah, so I guess there's a few things overall that make us optimistic that glasses are the next computing platform. One is that you kind of have this trajectory over time where computing gets to be more natural and more integrated in our lives, and glasses just give you the opportunity to interact with technology but remain present with the people around you, which I think is a really fundamentally important thing that obviously phones don't do. When you interact with your phone, you're kind of interacting with this small rectangle. It pulls you away from the world around you. You want to have technology be able to effectively fully integrate with the world around you. So that's a big one. Another piece is that glasses are the ideal form factor for you to be able to give an AI assistant that works for you the ability to see what you see, hear what you hear, talk to you throughout the day, and eventually also display information in your field of view and be able to overlay things on the world around you. So that's something that you can get parts of that with other form factors. You might be able to, if you have earbuds, maybe it can hear what you hear and maybe it can talk to you. But I think the visual part is going to be very important, and obviously glasses, I think, are the ideal form factor for that. And then one more thing is just that glasses are it's a thing that people have, right? I mean, there's almost 2 billion people in the world wear optical glasses already, and billions more wear sunglasses. So I kind of think we're at this moment now where it's kind of like, everyone had everyone had flip phones, and then you got smartphones came out, and it just kind of it felt pretty clear that in 5 years or whatever, all of the flip phones were going to be smartphones. And that's basically, how I feel about glasses today. It's like, what is the reason why 5 years from now, any of the glasses that people wear are not going to be able to have this kind of functionality to help people out throughout their day? It just doesn't quite make sense. So I think it's a very natural design that people are used to.
How long ago did you have this revelation? And sort of, once you seize upon this idea, what are the dominoes that you have to start setting up?
Well, I mean, we've been working on this, I think, since 2014. Right? I think the earliest part of our work on, we started working on virtual reality and augmented reality, and the notion is that, okay, virtual reality, allows you to do some of the augmentation of the world in a somewhat larger form factor before you get into the one that people are going to wear every day. But some of the glasses that we've been working on, it's more than 10 years at this point. I think the partnership with EssilorLuxottica, we've done multiple generations, starting with the original Ray-Bans that we did, and then just each year we've added more functionality. It's gotten to, it adds more functionality to, so now you can do phone calls, you can listen to music. It has all this functionality to help people who might not be able to see. If someone can't hear well, it can amplify the hearing in their ears. Like all the different functionality just kind of add generation over generation. The AI keeps on getting better. No, I think we're going to be working on this for decades more. But I think this is I think the next 5 years are going to be a really key period for this.
You have had access to these probably longer than almost anyone on the planet. How have they changed your daily routine?
The main thing that I notice is just there are a lot of things that you could do on your phone. But if you have glasses on, it's just better. All right, so being able to talk to, take phone calls and have your ear open and not occluded. So it's like, all right, I'm just walking down the street and you can hear what's going on. I think that's really nice. The fact that the microphone is in the nose pad, so the clarity of the audio that it picks up is so high that you could literally be in a wind tunnel and it would sound completely clear to the person on the other side. I mean, I've taken business calls on a jet ski, not often, but but it has happened. And the other person could not tell that I was on it. It's great, right? That's good. You don't necessarily want to tell the other person that you're on a jet ski. So I think that kind of stuff is nice. But the main way that I think that this is going to work is that, it's not like all the other computing platforms go away, right? When we started using phones, our computers didn't go away. We still have computers, but I don't know how many of you feel this way, but I'm sitting at my desk, my computer's right there, but I still just reach for my phone to go send someone a message or something, right? Because it's just, the phone has kind of become the primary platform. And I think similarly, glasses are going to be that. So I think as you can do more and more with the glasses, we'll just kind of be in a world where you'll have your phone with you, but it'll just kind of stay in the pocket more of the time. And then maybe eventually you'll leave it at home more of the time. But I don't think that, in the next 10 years we're going to stop having phones or something like that. I just think that glasses are going to, each generation, become more and more the primary thing that we use and just be more integrated into our lives.
Having started this in 2014, I know that Meta is very early, or has been very early on the AI wave, and responsible for a lot of early machine learning in the 20-teens, long before anyone in this crowd was interacting with an LLM. There have been revolutionary steps that have taken place in the last 6 months, 12 months.
Totally.
How has that changed sort of how you think about what is inside the glasses and how people will use them?
So one of the neat things is that if you get the hardware package right, hardware is kind of slow, right? So we've been planning this generation of glasses for 2 years, or whatever the cycle is for that. And we're planning the 2028 line of glasses now, right, and all that. Then you get all these releases in between that are basically just the AI getting better and better. So if you buy these glasses today, they're just going to keep on getting more and more useful for you as the AI becomes more powerful and able to do more things. So the biggest advances in the last couple of years, I'd say there's the simple one on multimodal understanding, right? So just being able to not just ask it a question, but actually have it be able to see what's going on around you and be able to kind of talk to you about that is quite helpful. And obviously language translation at this point is almost solved, right? So you have the real-time translation built into it, so you travel to another place, it can basically speak to you and translate another language. But one of the things that I'm really excited about is the advance in the agentic AI. So what I guess I mean by that is moving away from this use pattern where you ask it a question and it's one question, one answer, right? It's what I think this is going to evolve more towards is either you give it a task and it goes away and thinks and then comes back a bit later, or you just have these live sessions where it's I'm cooking, I'm baking something with my daughter, and I'm terrible at this, and I'm just trying to do it to hang out with my 3-year-old who's into baking, and it can basically just, it's no, really don't do that, do this instead, and it's okay, that's good, I didn't even have to ask it, it's watching, right, it knows. Do not put the flour there. So that I think is really good, right, and basically as you tune the system, you can go from half an hour of the always on AI to an hour to 2 hours to eventually that's just all day, right? And then that's a very different mode of using the AI where now obviously you'll have control over how you're when you want it to be on and not, but you can see that pretty quickly I think we're going to get to the zone where you effectively have the ability for your AI to see what you see, hear what you hear, summarize that, help you out with all of these things throughout the day. And it's just kind of amazing when you plug this stuff into an AI, how much of the signal that we have throughout our day that we just kind of miss, or we tune stuff out because we're focused on something, but there's something else happening that was important, or someone said something in a conversation. And so kind of the ability to have that kind of memory or be able to help you in all these ways is going to be incredibly important.
How do you sort of normalize, because this does allow you to be present, but it is somewhat intrusive in your life, particularly if it is helping you and actively engaging in everything that you're
you want to make sure, I think, so our mantra for designing the glasses is that they have to be great glasses first. I guess what we mean is that the technology is secondary, the fashion and the wearing it is actually primary, which is it was an interesting thing for us to get there as a technology company, because I think most of the technology companies think about it as all right, we're trying to cram all this technology into it. It's this shape looks kind of like the glasses that they put out. Why won't people wear this? But I think it's I think the reality is that you're going to wear the glasses, whatever glasses you have, you're going to wear for many hours, and you're going to use the technology for some small fraction of it. And it's actually really important. So in order to unlock that, it needs to be that the glasses are something that you're proud to wear, and they need to be comfortable so that way you'll wear them for long periods of time. So they have to be great glasses first. Part of that also means getting out of the way, right? So I think a lot of technology companies kind of have the vision of, oh, well, we can help you here, and we can help you here, and we can help you here, and like, okay, let's just kind of like bombard you with stuff, and it's like, people don't want that. I don't want that, right? It's like, I think you actually want it to be very sparing in terms of when it will ping you or interrupt you on something. So that's kind of the way that we think about it, is great glasses first, technology available when you want it, with more and more capabilities, but we really don't want it to be intrusive.
I was watching an interview that you gave, I guess, the last fall around the release of the latest Ray-Bans. And you were just sort of talking about your vision for AI in general and how you were trying to articulate, I guess, the idea that there would be sort of bespoke models and that people would sort of curate their own sort of suite of AI that they use. And I'm curious, a year later, because there has been quite a bit of innovation in the field, is that still how you see it all playing out?
Yeah, so our vision for what we're trying to build on the AI side, we call personal superintelligence. And the idea, I think it's very different from what the kind of consensus view of all of the other AI labs is. I think most other companies that are working on AI think that there's going to be like, one big AI that everyone uses, or that it's kind of like doing stuff for the world. And I don't know. I mean, maybe this is just the legacy that we have of from the history of the company building social media. It's all about building tools, putting them in people's hands, believing that people should have agency to use the tools and express the things that they want to, and that there's fundamentally this view, I think that in order to have a good future with a strong AI, you want a lot of like checks and balances, right? So I don't want to live in a future where there's like one big AI. I think that's a bad future. No matter how good the AI is, I think like that's not good. I think the way that this ends up being good is you actually just, you direct the technology development towards empowering every individual. And the reality is that people have different aspirations, and the aspirations sometimes overlap with each other, and sometimes they compete with each other, and that competition is important because that is sort of our society and market's way of putting checks and balances on the way that things work. And I think in a world where kind of everyone has a personal superintelligence that has the context that you want it to have, because you have whatever devices you have that can give it the context that you want it to have about your life, and it can help you achieve your goals and work on your behalf 24/7, and as many people around the world as possible have that. To me, that's the best shot that we have of getting to a future that is like really good, right? It's like that in that world, I think people are empowered, but also you kind of have a fundamental kind of check on this, and there's a balance of power and how that works. So I think that I think is just a very fundamental thing for our philosophy, and everything that we're developing, from the kind of AI software and the models and the technology to the idea of the hardware and the glasses and different things that we'll make to make it so that people can use this in different ways. It's kind of all in service of that philosophy. You
mentioned the sort of checks and balances and the importance of that. I don't know if you're familiar with the book that came out last fall, If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies. I'm a bit curious. Do you think that there's any credence to that kind of, doomer concern around the implications of AI?
I guess I'm not as familiar with that book, but I think the concept of kind of AI safety is obviously a very important one, right? So I guess I'm a little more optimistic than that. I don't think if anyone builds it, everyone will die. But I do think that anything that is a powerful new technology gives people the ability to do good things, and it can give people the ability to do bad things. And the more powerful the lever that you're giving people, the more good and the more harm that they can potentially do. So obviously taking that very seriously and working to mitigate the harm while making it as positive as possible for people is incredibly important. But that's where you get to this philosophy that I was talking about, which is, what is the best way to ensure that we have a positive future if the technology development continues on its trajectory? I think some people would say, okay, what you want to do is build this singular AI and make it like as aligned as possible. And I don't know that that's going to be enough, right? I think because I think the reality is this: if you have one thing that is super powerful, I don't know. I mean, there have been a lot of people or regimes that get absolute power over time, and that usually just doesn't end well, right? No matter how enlightened the thing is. And I think humans are limited in our ability to build enlightenment into a thing, no matter how hard we try. So I kind of think that there is a natural mechanism that humanity and civilization has, which are checks and balances. So my version of this is, in terms of creating a positive future, is not that you have one central thing, but I think it's like you really need it to be widely distributed. And it's, in some ways, it's somewhat of a controversial concept, because I think some people would say, oh, well, if you give a very a model or an AI that has a lot of capabilities to individuals, won't they do bad things? But I don't know. I think that this has always been a historical tension between liberty and empowering individuals and how you build society. And I think at every step along the way, we tend to benefit when we try to go for giving people more freedom and more agency, and not saying, oh, this is too much for a person to handle. We want people to have the individual agency to do that. And I think that that's the path to a better future. So I think if we do that, I'm pretty optimistic about the future. But I don't know. Different people are trying to build different things. So I hope our vision is the one that gets built.
I'm curious because you were obviously instrumental in the creation of social media as we know it, and obviously dealt with second and third order consequences, some surprising and positive, some that had to be mitigated. With AI, what are the things on the horizon that you think people are not expecting that will sort of enliven society or present potential dangers?
Yeah, so I guess the ones that most people are focused on right now is you're having this huge ability for the AI to be able to code, which is helpful, because even for people who are not engineers, there's just a lot of coding that you want it to be able to do. So it's like, I don't know, I have this agent, I put cameras up in my MMA gym, and I'm like, all right, can you just watch me and give me feedback in between rounds? And it's like, all right, that's actually a coding problem, right? Because now it has to deal with the kind of video pipeline of processing all the image frames that come in and piping that in and figuring out when I'm in between rounds and then sending me the thing. So obviously the better that stuff gets at coding, the better it gets at being able to, you get more cybersecurity threats. I think that's obviously one of the big topics now. I think one of the things on the horizon that I think we're going to start seeing more scientific advances. So my philanthropic work outside of Meta, Priscilla and I created this thing, BioHub, where our goal is to help advance the pace of scientific research in order to help scientists cure and prevent disease, all diseases this century. And when we started that, we thought that was really ambitious. Okay, cure and prevent all diseases this century. Now it's probably too conservative. I think I don't know if it's going to be a decade or 2 decades or whatever, but I would guess it'll be much sooner than the end of the century when you get there. And I think a lot of that is because of the progress of building these AI models that can effectively simulate biology and therefore help with drug design and help with understanding of fundamental parts of biology and how to get the right equilibrium for how all that works. But the things that can create that, I think there's the concern that, well, could someone who's bad use that to make things that hurt people, right? Or create a bioweapon or something. And I think that that's still an open question, but I think it's clearly a thing that really needs to be thought through carefully. And I think is one of the things on the horizon that we need to be careful about. So I think that those are probably the two in the next year or two that I think there's a path to unlock a huge amount of value, and also I think a clear roadmap to mitigate some of the concerns, but also pretty big concerns that I think you want to be careful about. And then once you get beyond that, I think you start getting into these broader societal questions around the balance of power and stuff that we talked about a minute ago that I think are just going to be really fundamental. People talk about stuff obviously, there's a lot of anxiety about job displacement. Companies are always trying to do things more efficiently, right? It's I'm sure you do, right? If you have a task, you don't want to just keep on doing the same task. You try to find a way to do it more efficiently. And at the same time, people kind of improve their own productivity. Well, there's a natural balance of this stuff, right? So if companies get very good at automating stuff faster than individuals get better at productivity, then you'd kind of assume that the number of jobs might decrease. But I think that people assume that that's an inevitability. I don't actually think it is. I think if you focus on empowering people and making people more productive, and that happens at a faster rate than companies get better at automating things, then in theory there should be more jobs in the future, not less. So I think that that's why you need this balance, right? If you just have a few companies and they're focused on automating all knowledge work, then all right, I don't know, that's probably not a great future, right? But if you have a balance where some companies are focused on making it so that companies can work more efficiently, but others are focused on more of this personal superintelligence vision where you're empowering individuals and making people more productive at each step along the way, then I think it's probably going to be pretty good. So I don't know. I think that this is just all stuff that you want to think through and be careful about. But I think that there is a path forward that can be very positive on this.
Well, you mentioned the cybersecurity thing, which obviously everyone's talking about with Anthropic having to roll back Mythos. And I'm curious because you've obviously worked with the federal government as an advisor. How do you think we should move forward with these sort of frontier models?
Different concerns have different answers for them. But if you take the jobs one that we were just talking about, my philosophy on this tends to be that more of the answer will come from putting the power into more people's hands rather than holding it back. There's kind of this spectrum from there are going to be a set of people who are going to argue, this is really dangerous, we must be the only ones who have this. And then there's a set of people who will say, no, this is powerful and there's some issues, but the answer is to make it so that this can be widely available and people will effectively check each other. I think different issues will have different balances of where you want to be on that. But I think our kind of instincts and philosophy as a company are more on the side of empowering individuals and thinking that more of the answers you get to a better state if you basically put the power in more people's hands. I definitely think that that's true on jobs. I think that's probably true on cybersecurity, right? I mean, if you think about stuff like open source software, it tends to be way more secure. It's somewhat counterintuitive, right? I mean, people thought early on, okay, open source, people can see the code, so that means that they can find the vulnerabilities more. This has got to be less safe, right? But kind of counterintuitively, okay, if more people can see the code, and then people find the vulnerabilities, then you fix the vulnerabilities. And then you can roll out the open source, you can kind of roll out the patches for that widely, and then you end up with much more hardened software. So I kind of think for all of this, what you want is just harden it very quickly. I hope that we will get to a point with AI where you can write verifiably secure code, that the AI can basically make it so that so that people can write code, whether it's whatever home automation thing I was just talking about or whatever people are doing in their own lives, and they can basically have the AI help them write code that is verifiably secure, so that way you kind of eliminate most of those issues.
You made a fairly large bet on AI with your, I think it was a $14 billion investment in Scale AI and hiring Alexander Wang a year ago. Are you happy with where Meta is in the AI race, and where do you plan to be a year from now?
I mean, I'm never happy with where we are. So I think that's how is it working for me? No, we got the guys in the front row. Today's a pretty good day. You launched something good. Back to work tomorrow. Now, no, I mean, look, we're making a lot of progress. We'd had these run of these Llama models, and unfortunately, the Llama 4 model was not on the trajectory we needed to be. So we did this pretty big thing to reboot the lab and kind of build it up. And if you'd asked me a year ago, the kind of new lab that we built is less than a year old at this point. I think it was June 30th that we got it, that we started the Meta Superintelligence Labs. If you told me that we'd be where we are today in terms of the model progress, I would have been very happy with that. But because I have acclimated to the good news along the way, I now think that we should be doing even better. So anyway, that's kind of more my personality. But I think the industry is kind of making good progress. I'm quite happy with it. I'm quite happy with the glasses. I think is sort of, it's not just about you build a model in a lab. I think the question is what are the ways that this can actually be something that is useful in people's lives? And we have a few form factors for this already. You have the AI assistant, an app on your phone or on your computer, and that's cool when you're doing that. Obviously very useful. You have 1 billion people or more doing that. But I just think that you want to get it to a point where it's more ambient and woven into your life. And I think one of the things that we've learned is that a lot of the AI products that are out there today are not very personalized yet. They're starting to be able to understand some stuff from the context of previous conversations, But the reality is that like most of the stuff about you is not like, it doesn't exist in conversations that you've had with your AI. I think like if you want to get to this vision around personal superintelligence and something that can ambiently help you throughout your day, I think devices like glasses are going to end up being really critical to that. So that's one of the reasons why we've been working on this for a long time. And I think this is like one of the things that I'm most proud of that we're doing is it's a very novel intellectual contribution, I think, in that it's, you know, I don't think that many other companies are really focused on fusing frontier AI with like really good design that are something that you just want to wear.
You presently have about 80% of the market share in the AI-assisted glasses. Some competitors have stepped into the ring in the last week or so with announcements. What are your thoughts about them as a fairly competitive person?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's early. So, I mean, and I think a lot of other companies are going to do this because we've, I think, Meta and EssilorLuxottica have shown that this works.
Yes.
Right, so I think we've tried a lot of things that didn't work, right? And basically, in this one, I think clearly works, and now it is natural and normal that when you kind of have something like that, now kind of the industry will kind of focus on that, and we have quite a technological lead on this. So I feel really excited about the stuff that's coming up over the coming years. But there's a lot to invent, right? So, you know, part of this, what we're talking about here, the kind of glasses that can see and hear and talk to you. There's obviously the kind of visual side of it with the displays. So we started rolling out the Meta Ray-Ban displays last year. With the small display, we've shown the basic, like the prototype version of the kind of full wide field of view display.
It's incredible.
And I mean, it's like magical. It's a little heavier than we'd like it to be for you know, we try to get to like.
Considered, it's pretty impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, that one we worked on for like 10 years, that prototype. It's cool. We want to get it down to about 50 grams, you know, maybe 60 grams, or maybe even 70 grams to start. But you know, the real target for what we think is like all-day comfort is probably closer to 50 grams. And you also, I mean, people want a variety of different styles. Like people like different things. So some people like very thin glasses, some people like chunkier glasses. Chunky glasses are helpful for putting a lot of technology into, right? But there's limits on that too, right? And there's going to be this spectrum of things that people are going to want from. Some people I think will want kind of very minimal technology, very light, and then some people I think are going to want the kind of the full immersive, like wide field of view holograms. You can like, you know, sit down at a coffee shop and have like 3 huge monitors up in front of you, or you're on a plane and you just have like a huge wide field of view TV display that doesn't physically exist, but it's there, and like that's going to be awesome. But yeah, I think that there are going to be different points on the spectrum that people want for what functionality they want to have, and also different price points. So the more technology you put into it, it'll be a little thicker, which we think we can make stylish, but that will take some time to get the miniaturization to be very good. And also the more technology you put in, the more expensive it is. So people will make decisions based on fashion, the functionality, and the price point that they want. But there is a lot to do here, and I think it's we're taking a pretty maximalist approach of like trying to, I guess we just think that like, you know, glasses are not a phone. People do not want the same kind of brick as a phone. This is like a very fundamental part of your expression of who you are and what you wear on a day-to-day basis. So you need to cover a lot of space in terms of options in order to really serve the market.
You mentioned these working and trying things sometimes that don't work. And you know, you've made a number of large bets during the course of your career, all of which have been backseat driven by the media, from you know, acquiring Instagram and WhatsApp to the metaverse stuff. I'm curious, what do you think is the sort of acceptable ratio of working to not work?
I don't know if it's a
Nobody
ratio.
bats 1,000.
What's up? Well, yeah, no, definitely not. I think the question is how much you win when you win. Like Walter Isaacson wrote this biography of Einstein, and like one of the things that I thought was the most interesting is like all the theories he had that were wrong. And it's like when you look back on his life, people don't tend to remember those. Right? It's like, I think it's like we're all going to get a lot of stuff wrong. I think what matters are the intellectual contributions or, you know, cultural contributions that we make that help push stuff forward. So I don't know. I think that there's like a lot of analogies. You can pick a fighting analogy or something. It's like, all right, you get knocked down a bunch. Like what really matters is how many times do you keep trying, right? Get up and keep going. I think we have a pretty resilient company that is not very afraid of failure. And that allows us to take some big swings and also tolerate being ridiculed for long periods of time. Because to some degree, if you're trying to do something that's really new, people have to think it's ridiculous for some period of time. Because if they didn't, then someone else would have already done it. It would already be in the Overton window. So you're like fundamentally trying to do things that people think are like weird or like a little crazy. And you obviously try to do it in a way that is as grounded as possible. But I kind of think if you're not pushing it and people don't think what you're doing is a little wild, then I don't know, you're probably just not taking enough. You're probably not swinging hard enough. Mixed like 18 metaphors in that answer.
Look,
but it's
if you bat 300, you're going to the All-Star game. 330, you're Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing though about creation is that in baseball, the maximum that you can do is get a home run, and you first base, second base, you can go 4, right?
Yeah.
In creation, the upside is almost infinite. It's not like you can do stuff, you can hit singles, or you can build something that billions of people use, and it's just not linear. You can if you end up like building something that hundreds of millions or billions of people like, then that ends up making up for a lot of ideas that didn't end up working that well. Now, but I think that that's fine. It's also, this is all part of the process. I don't even think that the things that don't work aren't even necessarily failures as much as they are just ways that you are learning on the way to something that will work. There's lots of ways that we all learn. There's kind of a market-based way where there's often a lot of different startups that do things. But in hardware, one of the things that's complicated is that it's kind of expensive to take shots, right? So part of what we've wanted to do is, before we got into building these kind of glasses, there weren't a lot of companies that were doing this. So a lot of the experimentation we basically did by just doing a lot of different types of things and seeing what worked and doubling down on those things and trying to incorporate the things that that seemed promising, but maybe there was some product that we were doing, but there was something promising in it, but then a bunch of other things that made it not feel that good overall. If you take the promising thing, you kind of incorporate it into something else, and you keep going. So I don't know. I think this is all like how you learn.
Well, you talk about sort of the scale of creation being infinite, and in the position that you have been for the last 20 years, you make decisions that impact people in ways that are much bigger than most CEOs, and in fact probably more akin to leaders of global powers. How much does that pressure cost you?
I think different people are wired differently. Making decisions that are high stakes but are based on ideas that I believe in has never been something that has stressed me out that much. The thing that stresses me out, part of the joy of building things is doing it with people, right? So no one's doing this in a vacuum. And I think a lot of how I define what is meaningful in my own life and what I want to do in my career is I want to work with people who are the best at what they do and try to work with them on in new areas. It's one of the reasons why I think designing the glasses has been so fun, because I wasn't like a fashion person, right? But now it's like, but I have so much to learn, right? It's like, so we work with these companies that are great. Like EssilorLuxottica is the best glasses company in the world, and we've learned so much working with them, and I think that they've learned stuff from us on the technology side. It's been awesome as a partnership, and working with more folks in fashion and the work that we've gotten to do on Instagram. It's really fun. I do this. I try to do it in my personal life with different hobbies. Some of which we've talked about designing jewelry for my wife, whatever. It's like designing different things. I think all that stuff. It's really fun to just work with people who are the best at what they do to learn. The most stressful thing for me is when working with the people isn't fun. So I think if you don't feel like you have good alignment, then that's actually the thing that really stresses me out. But taking big bets on things that I believe in philosophically, I don't know, maybe that's just how I'm wired, but I'm fine with that. I'm fine knowing that my idea could be wrong and it could hurt if it ends up being wrong, but I'm just wired in a way where I almost have to do what I believe And it will hurt me more to not do that thing than it will be to like stress or perseverate on like whether I can, like afford to do it. It's like, no, that's just like the kind of my constitution on that.
Is there anyone whose taste or instinct you trust equal to or greater than your own?
There's a lot of people I trust more than my instinct. I think I like trust my instinct on like kind of aesthetic or philosophy of what a good future would be. But in almost any area that we work in, the people who are working on that thing are spending way more time on it than I am, right? Just because I'm working on a lot of different projects. So, I mean, I think whether it's a partner who I'm working on a project with or the teams internally, to some degree, it's like they better have better taste on that than me, or else, like, what are we even doing, right? I'll just do it myself. So, yeah.
What is your process to educate yourself when you enter into a space that you want to learn about?
I think it's more just immersion. So it's not a formal process of like, I'm going to ask like these 20 questions or something. It's just like, let's go find someone who I like working with or multiple people. Because I think most of these projects, they are like very intense and they're long-term things. So I think doing it with a group of people who you don't just like, right? It was actually very good advice that I got early on when I was building the company. I was like a young kid at the time, right? I started the company when I was 19, and I thought I should hire all these like people who had a lot of professional experience, and it's like didn't click for some reason. Then one of our investors was like, just like you should probably hire people who you think you'd want to be friends with, right? It's like, no, it's kind of like odd as advice, but you're going to spend so much time with these people that you really need to like each other. So I think that's probably like just the kind of identification of people who you think are going to be excellent, who you want to learn from. I kind of have this rule for myself now where I only want to hire someone to be on my team if in an alternate universe I'd be okay working for them. And that doesn't mean that I'm trying to like, I like running the company, so I'm not like it's not. I'm not looking to flip that around. But I think in an alternate universe, I think like any of the people on our team, I think I'd learn a lot from, and I think they'd do very interesting things, and I feel like that would be kind of fun, right? And so I think you get that, you find the right people, and then you spend a lot of time. And I think that there's probably some degree of humility, but that's probably trite to say, because I think the complexity is obviously in knowing which things you don't know and which things you do. And a lot of times these collaborations, it's not one way. It's not like you're working with someone who is the master and you're an apprentice. These are collaborations where you each have something to give, and you're trying to understand in what ways the values around, for example, designing glasses vary from the values around designing an app or other types of things. I mean, the values around designing a watch is different from the values around designing glasses, right? And I think that's like, so I think in each step, like each different area, what excellence is has some similarities in terms of kind of craft and attention to detail and boldness in terms of the aesthetic, but there are also subtle differences. Certain things need to be expressed more for different fields than others, and getting that balance right is values. And negotiating that is a very interesting thing, and I think it works a lot better when you like and trust the people. And so I think figuring that out is like a really key part of the whole thing.
In addition to enjoying being around the people that you work with, I'm curious, you have been in this seat for now over 20 years. You have lived to see...
It's been a different seat.
Well, fair. Most of your ops either retire or fall by the wayside. And you have a lovely compound in Hawaii, and I'll round up here, but infinite money. What keeps you doing this and not just absconding to the island to hang out with the family and tinker and make jewelry?
Well, that is something that Priscilla asks me a lot, especially when stuff is hard. But it's kind of this funny thing. We have one of our daughters has the, I don't know, whatever it is, the gene where it's like you have a lot of creative output that you need to make. And honestly, until we had kids, I think Priscilla didn't fully understand like this element of how I was wired. I think she kind of thought that I was gonna do stuff for a while, and then at some point I'd like mellow out. But it's I don't know what I'd do. That would be boring. I think it's like I I can rest for like a couple of days, right? Just like
You've earned it.
Yeah, play computer games or something, But I think after that, it's just like there's just stuff that you want to put into the world, and I don't know. That's kind of like that's how I'm wired. So I think it's like important to get time to recharge and relax and like make sure that you're talking to different people so you have good varied perspectives. Because if you go too deep on one thing for too long, you can kind of dry up the creative energy. But yeah, no, I don't know. I don't think I'm ever gonna stop. I think it's just like I'll just find different things to do, but they don't all have to be super high stakes. I mean, it's like on the ranch, one of my projects is I'm trying to like create the highest quality beef in the world. It's like this is very low stakes, right? It's like I'm not selling it. I'm not, but it's like I'm like very into the genetics of the cattle. We're trying to figure out like how do you make it so that you basically can deliver the highest density diet to them. We started growing macadamia trees because like that kind of nut is like extremely dense, and then they will eat a lot, so they will put on weight and become fat quicker and become delicious. But then it's like, all right, the macadamia nuts, they have a lot of oil, so you need to actually roast that. So now we need to design this whole process to roast the nuts so that way you can give them to the cows. And then like, well, okay, but you want them to eat more, so then it's like, how do you get them to eat more? Well, it turns out alcohol is great, right, for that, because what alcohol induces appetite. So that's actually why, like, very high-end beef, they're fed beer. But, okay, what's the right balance of beer versus water? It's like, I don't know, let's let them choose. They get either as much cold beer as they want or as much room temperature water. And they can kind of balance that, so now we're brewing all this beer and we're putting it out, and it's like, I'm never gonna stop. It doesn't matter how important or whatever the thing is. It's like, yeah, I'll do some projects that don't matter that much, but like, I don't know.
How do you find time? 3 kids, wife, 9 companies, and cattle farm that you're innovating on.
I don't know. I actually think part of the balance is you need to find some balance of different things to work on. Because I think when you work on one thing too hard, you can burn it. Right, and you can burn the people, and so I think that's actually part of the thing that's one of the things that I struggle with, because I can get obsessive. But I don't know. I think it's just like finding interesting projects to do with interesting people is it's a good life.
Well, on that note, Mark, thank you so much for your time. This
Thank
was
you.
really great.